I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This is part 2 of Brian Keating, who you've probably listened to before on this podcast. Both part 1 and part 2 are available today. You can download both of them. As always, a great conversation with Brian where I learned so much and heard so many interesting stories. So here it is.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
Brian, you and I consider us friends, but we've only met on podcasts. we met.
That's not true.
In the TEDx in San Diego.
Yeah, we met in person in the green room.
Yes, yeah.
That was like 8 years ago.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
But like, I should spend more time face to face with my friends. You know, you invited me to, I think it was your 50th party. I was not able to make it. Yep. I should have made more of an effort to make it. I had intended initially to go, and then things caught up with me, and I couldn't make it.
Yeah,
and
I know.
I feel I should be less ambitious and more about, improving my relationships, improving my mentorships, improving at the things I love doing instead of always chasing after false accolades and things I don't necessarily enjoy doing. This is advice.
Have you ever heard this book before called The 5 Regrets of the Dying?
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. One of those is, as you said, I wish I kept up with my friends. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I wonder how many people are actually doing that though. Like when you're in, and these are people on hospice basically, or right before hospice, at the end of their life, there's some caregiver and a nurse that's asking these questions. I think she's in Australia. It's a great book. I haven't read it, but the summary is just like, it's one of these books like, it's like the book of the 10 Commandments. You just need to read them, I think. I wish I had let myself be happier. I wish I had the courage to express my opinions and my feelings, and I wish I hadn't worked so hard. So I see that. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Nobody is on their dying, bed and said, I wish I spent more time on Zoom telecons. Definitely agree with that. But I wish I had the courage to live a life. How many people do you think right now, James, are not living the life that they want, and they're leading it because, like, an 80-year-old or 70-year-old?
Most people.
Really?
Yeah, I could think.
Who do you care about? Let's take Jay. Do you think Jay is living a life,
Jay is living the best life he could possibly be living right now. Jay has no complaints.
Jay, So Jay and I have spent more time together in the last 2 years than you and I have. We had an amazing Chinese food.
Working for James is my best time ever.
Yeah, it's true.
I know. It's pretty. How long have you guys been together? Does he still get you anniversary presents?
2016.
It's 2016.
2016.
We even have
given him a raise. Wait, is he going on strike? Jay, are you going on strike soon?
Never
with my
on strike
students?
with James.
Damn.
Never on strike with James. James is probably the only employer that I would never go on strike with.
Is this longer than most of your marriages, James?
It's longer than all of them. So my business partner Dan, he's my partner in investing, and he's been my partner on several entrepreneurial ventures. He's been on this podcast actually about 6 or 7 times now because we did.
Yeah.
And we've been partners. Well, he started working for me in late 1999 or early 2000. So he was working for me, but we've been actual 50 partners since 2001. So that's 21 and a half years right now. And we have never once had an argument. Now we've disagreed on lots of things, but we've never been I've never been upset, angry at him. And I'm pretty sure vice versa, which is a really great. I'm really happy about that partnership. I wish I had more of that in my life. Jay and I.
But I think living a life that's not true to yourself. Like my father, again, I ended up reuniting with him, but he always blamed his mother, as a 50-year-old, as when I knew him as an adult, we were both adults. And he blamed my mother didn't even know how to breastfeed and this and that. I'm like, you're 50 years old, man. I'm overweight. I could lose another 15, 20 pounds
you don't
easily.
seem overweight.
Well, I carry it well. I did drop 5'11".
Yeah, how much do you weigh?
5'11", 5'12" with the afro. How much do I weigh? That's very personal. I weigh north of 200 pounds.
All right, so
well, I could lose 25 pounds and be really, then I'd be as ripped as you are looking right now.
Okay, I'm at the upper end of my weight in my life. So I'm 5'9" and I'm 160 pounds. So really, I feel like I should be. Normally, I've been around 150, and for some reason now I'm 160, and I don't know why.
Well, some reason I don't know what happened the last couple of years.
Well,
not that you were jogging 6 kilometers a day, back.
I wear the same size clothes. I have a theory that I've been working out more, and muscle weighs more than fat. So
that's true. It does. But when my father would say things and I have one of my sons is I call him my twin. And he looks like me. He acts like me. He's got the same personality. He wants to have a podcast. He wants to meet Jay. And he's overweight. As I was really overweight as a kid. He's not as bad as I am, and he's much taller. He's super tall. He's almost 5 feet tall, and he's just 10 years old. But when I look at him, and I'm like, okay, so I was overweight as a kid. Now, if I go to a therapist, and we have this Matt Damon, in Good Will Hunting. Remember that movie? And if I've learned anything from movies, James, is that to have a psychological breakthrough, a man has to become completely weepy, teary, and just bawling on his therapist, Robin Williams' chair, right? Okay. So let's say that's true for me because my parents got divorced. My father abandoned me, my older brother and me, and went off, created a new life, got remarried, didn't talk to me, did his thing. Then, and I live with my stepfather who had, he would drink a lot. He would hit, on occasion, just discipline. I wasn't abused, thank God. And I have a lot of respect for what he did. But this is just the reality of my life, right? It happened. I was uprooted. I moved 5 times before going freshman year of high school. It was a lot for me. And so you could say, oh, well, that's why you're overweight. As a kid. And that's why maybe you're still overweight because you haven't dealt with this childhood trauma. Maybe I do need that, James. Maybe I need to go to Robin Williams and just break down, bawl my eyes out. But I haven't. And, whatever. I'm not saying anything negative about psychotherapy. I think it's fine. But then I look at my son, and he's also a little overweight. Again, not nearly as much as I was. He's had 2 loving parents, never divorced, never moved, never lived in a different room. Goes to great school, has a lot of, and he's so in other words, if I'm blaming my childhood as a 51-year-old man, I think I'm kind of a loser. And I think, to do that, people well, maybe you just need to get in touch with this childhood trauma. And I know you had challenges and you had issues, but I think there has to be a statute of limitations. When you are first of all, I'm now I'm taking care of my mother. I'm financially, my brother and I, we have to support her. She's in her 80s, right? And she's not married. My father's dead. So I'm taking care of my children. I'm taking care of my parents. It's very awkward and my career is in like full bloom, right? And I'm doing all these side hustles, and but like, you gotta stop blaming your past. You gotta stop blaming your parents at a
That's
certain
true,
point.
but living a life true to yourself is more than that, right? Like maybe you're working for a
How so?
boss so you're always
Mm.
trying to kiss his ass because you want promotions or whatever. Or maybe you're married to someone who politically is one way and you're politically another way, but you can't say where you feel politically because you're afraid she would lose interest in you. Or maybe you're a salesman, so you're always trying to please the people you're selling. There's a lot of reasons why, like I feel from the year 2000 to the year
Mhm.
20 2010, roughly a 10-year period, maybe even longer, maybe 1995 to 2010. I was totally not living a life true to myself. It was only when I really started writing about my own stories in 2010, and I
Mhm.
was I reduced my expenses, and because I had just gotten out of a period of going broke, and I was able to, and I wasn't working for anybody. I
Mhm.
was able to live a life true to myself, and I've always tried to stick to that. But it's hard, I think, because of so many different agendas. And I think the more ambition one has, the less you can live true to yourself, because the more you have to cater to the people you're ambitious about.
Mhm. Yeah, but I mean, do you feel like the fact that you weren't that's a specific circumstance. So unless you're totally self-employed or inherit money or born on third base, at a certain point, when is the statute of limitations when you are out of the nest? Every decision at some level, like you
Oh,
could have quit,
for
right? I
me,
mean,
I
you
didn't
felt pressure that you couldn't, but you could have quit, right? I mean,
I
it
didn't care
wasn't
what my
like you weren't
parents
a
thought
slave.
the day after I left their house, like when I was 18. But
Sorry, you didn't talk to them, you
no, I
said?
didn't care what they thought. Like,
Oh, you didn't care,
yeah.
right? So that was living a life true to yourself. So from 18, at least with the vector in the direction of your parents, you were living a life true to yourself. And now you're certainly living. In other words, I guess I'm skeptical of these notions of catharsis, that like everything has a root cause, or Freud thought everything was traceable to sex, or Frankl thought everything was traced to like searching for meaning, and there's kind of like I said, a statute of limitations when you were an adult, and yes, you may have been actually traumatized. I mean, you and I have multiple mutual friends that have been like legitimately traumatized, abused, and so forth, and yet they're incredibly healthy individuals,
Yes.
and they've gotten past that, and it's almost like they weren't responsible for what happened to them, God forbid, but they're responsible for how they react to it.
Look, I think this is really important. Like I wrote a book, Choose Yourself, because it was basically don't let anyone else choose your opinions, your job, your passions, your anything. And it's the whole book was about that. But I wrote it because it was something I had to learn, because I wasn't choosing myself. I wanted to be picked and selected. I wanted some group of people to like me and reward me. And to live true to yourself, you have to at every level choose who you are. And it doesn't, and it's not like it happens once and then forever after you're free. It's like every single day. You
Hmm.
have to do this. Every single day you have to
Hmm.
make progress. Even if it doesn't mean make progress at X. Like I can't make progress at basketball every day because I'm getting older. I'm gonna get worse at basketball every day. I don't play basketball, but I'm just using that as an, but
Despite the 5'9" hops that you have. But that actually reminds me of a notepad idea I have. I have a couple ideas for you. So you've been watching 1883, right?
yes.
And Yellowstone.
Yeah, and 1923 is coming out in a few days.
Yeah. What do you think of this idea? You know how that's kind of rekindled this notion of like westerns, and like Tractor Supply Company is like seeing this huge explosion, and there's whiskey brands and whatever, all these western themes.
Yeah.
Okay, I have an idea mapping directly on from Yellowstone onto, stay with me, the biblical patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph, and Jacob and Joseph. Okay,
Oh,
so
by
the
the way,
Yellowstone.
it totally maps one to one. I'm sure it
Yeah.
was inspired by that.
Well, it may have been, although you really can't see much of that. But watching 1883, as I did on a 12-hour flight from Santiago to Los Angeles, that show, it's of course there's like people dying and there's attacks by Native Americans and then there's this and there's disease and there's bandits. All those themes are happening in the Old Testament, in the first book of the 5 books of Moses called Genesis. There's only 2 laws in that whole book that starts. It's 40% of the Torah, the Old Testament. It only has 2 commandments, like be fruitful and multiply and circumcision. That's basically
And
and the rest of the Torah has.
Wait a second. Don't eat the apple. That's in Genesis.
That's not one of the 613 commandments, but yes, yeah. There are. All I'm saying, it's all narrative. It's all stories.
That's in Genesis.
That's right. Onanism.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. That's actually technically spilling your seed. It's not masturbating, but masturbating does the same thing that onanism does. So in other words, let's not get into that.
Right.
The point is that Genesis is all stories, and the other 4 books of Moses are almost no stories and all laws. So it's kind of interesting. But the stories are, there's rape, there's like tribal invasions, there's wars between kings and queens, and there's takeovers and political dynasties and intermarriage, all incredible themes. And you can almost map like John Dutton, today onto, like, say, Joseph, when he's become the king of Egypt. Effectively, the Pharaoh, the courtier to the Pharaoh saved the life. There's a famine. There's wars. His brothers who sold him into slavery and told his father he had been killed, because they were jealous of his dreams. And he was hit upon by the Pharaoh's wife. It's incredible drama, right?
Yeah.
And so that's Yellowstone. Okay, so Joseph is Yellowstone. Then you go back to 1883. That's Abraham.
That's clearly
so Abraham like sets off into the land. He leaves Iraq and he goes to Canaan and Israel, and he has all these battles with the kings and his son. He has to sacrifice his son. These things. He's talking to God. He gets divorced from his wife. It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
The drama, and then Isaac is in there because Isaac is actually the one that we know least about. There's only like 2 or 3 chapters about him, and the women in Genesis are the heroes. They are the brilliant ones who tell the husbands are like kind of bumbling, like they're just too ethereal. They're talking to God, and the women are like, this kid who's living in our house is going to try to kill our son. And even the twins in my womb, Rebecca, says like the one is going to try to kill the other one, Esau and Isaac and Jacob. Anyway, and then the 1923 is Jacob, is where he goes and he settles the land, and he has these dreams and ladders. And anyway, I thought that I'd like to get your opinion. I actually pitched this to someone that I don't think you've had on your show, Ben Shapiro, I've become friendly with Ben Shapiro, who's had an incredible year himself.
Yeah.
And he said, I like the idea, which I thought was pretty high praise. So I'm going to pitch that to he has a whole production company now. And I'm going to pitch it to them as a screenplay. So anyway, stay tuned for that.
What's the idea? Just Genesis itself, or another?
Like Yellowstone, but mapped onto the Patriarch. So it would be called Canaan instead of Yellowstone, or maybe it would be called Patriarchs.
Yeah.
And it would be like a multi-series, multi-part, but not like, I don't want it to go on forever, like, Friends or something. It should just be like 2 years.
Like, look, whenever they've done this in other religions, like in India, when they did the Mahabharata as a TV series, it was like the most popular TV series in
must
all
see.
of it.
Yeah,
so
that was must see TV.
Yeah, no one's ever done that, really. I mean, they've done that about Jesus, but no one's ever done that about, and they've done, of course, the 10 Commandments, but the movie. But nobody's ever done it about Genesis. And you're right.
It's so funny, James, is that like people say like Kanye West. Will say, I love the way, by the way, that we have to respect his choice of name. Like, we have to call him Ye, or it's like not respect. Who cares? This freaking loser, anti-Semite, scumbag. I'm not going to call him Ye.
I agree.
F him.
It's a shame this stuff has come out about him. I do think he's like the greatest music producer, at least for hip hop of all time. Regardless.
He might be. But that's, again, I just did a video about this guy, Fritz Haber, who won the Nobel Prize in chemistry, who invented fertilization techniques and also invented the, tools that created the gas chambers and created chemical warfare. He's called the father of chemical warfare. And I have this video called The Man killed millions and then won a Nobel Prize.
Yeah,
But
I
anyway,
saw you.
so you could be very smart, but you can be very evil, right? So intelligence, wisdom, and knowledge are totally different things.
Yeah, and
So, okay, so that's one idea that maps. And the reason I think it'll be so successful is that people have this romanticization about the past. Like they forget about like how even after seeing like a guy gets bitten, I'm not spoiling it too much, but let's say someone gets bitten by a snake in 1883, right? And then it's like a death sentence. Like
Yeah.
you sprain your ankle and you're dead. You know, like we have this, but like sales of cowboy boots and Western and the Airbnb where Yellowstone is shot, you know, the Y in the barn, let's like rents for like $10,000 a night now. Anyway, people romanticize it. They're moving to Montana. They're changing the culture and the lifestyle. But the same thing could happen, you know, with respect to the Middle East. Like the Middle East is kind of having a renaissance. There's more peace there. Maybe not with Palestinians, but that'll happen. I hope. But the rest, you know, UAE, Dubai, the World Cup is in Qatar. You know, there's like almost a renaissance in the zeitgeist that people are getting very, very infatuated with Middle Eastern and the culture and the hospitality of the Middle East and showing that and how it traces back literally thousands of years. It's not like made up. You can call the Bible, you know, whatever you want, but the culture, like those things, family dynamics, where the role of women, the role of children, those are all crystallized back then.
you know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. One thing I'm always interested in is, I think, first off, I agree. I think the story of Genesis would make a great TV series, whatever. But I would argue, if you take any topic and map Genesis onto it, like they did, like you're making the comparison with the Yellowstone, that's going to be successful. So you have to decide: do you want the topic to be biblical, or do you want you could make a science fiction space opera like Star Wars? You could map Genesis onto Star Wars, because there's a generational thing happening, and there's about who inherits the the family power, essentially. And all these things happen in many stories. You know what also is the books of Samuel 1 and 2, I think would make a great series, because that's King David, which is arguably the most interesting story in the Bible, because that's got real, palace intrigue and wars and deception and betrayal. I mean, so does Genesis, but I think even the books of Samuel even more, with King David and King Saul and Solomon, and then if Israel split in half after Solomon. So we could we should do? We should just take every section of the Bible and turn it into a TV series, because
exactly, right. So that's one of my ideas. Then the other one, okay, so what's the problem? Like, when people get really famous, right? So they're getting really internet famous, and people are saying like they'd rather be famous even for doing something bad. And that's why, like, Ben Shapiro actually does something important, where if there's a mass shooting, like at the nightclub, the LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado last month, he won't use the name of the shooter. He won't ever mention that. And whereas the New York Times, they'll print the name and his upbringing, and like he can blame his mother because he was overweight.
He used to not to, historically.
When I look at that, but then you've got this whole thing where people are, some people are saying to Elon Musk, like, you better have a food taster. And, then you get so big that you become like a target, and everything you say, and you make fun of pronouns, prosecute Fauci and this and that. And and you get death threats, right? So, or you get doxxed. So imagine a service. So this is Anti-Doxing as a Service, ADAAS, okay? And this, so you go out there and you basically do what's called a white hat hacking thing. You find out everything about Jay, that you can possibly find out. And then you just protect him against all these different threat vectors, so it's basically like insurance against, Jay getting doxxed, he works, he just moved, back to Malaysia. I don't know. They're just making stuff up. So what do you think about that? As more things in society become more kind of highly prized, like fame, attention, I think it's going to get worse. People are going to go after Josh Peck. I've become friends with Shua Peck. like he's like has to have security. It's insane.
Yeah, no,
Maybe he's got 13 million
I
followers, but
think it's a good idea if it were possible. It's like sort of like cybersecurity. Like cybersecurity is an important industry now in society, but as has been described to me by cybersecurity companies, the good guys will never be as good as the bad guys are at creating the threats. And so for doxing, I think it's very hard to create that as a company. Now you can
yeah,
provide
okay,
insurance against doxing. That might be a company.
exactly.
So
That's right.
that might be that might be another thing, and then you have to just figure out if someone's gaming that or not. But uh, to prevent it, yeah, you can provide consulting to help prevent it, but it's unpreventable.
And then the last idea has to do with like this chat, AI chat GPT,
Hmm.
these chatbots, which are very interesting. I don't think they're quite there yet. I mean, maybe because it's more subjective than like beating somebody in chess or AlphaGo or whatever, or folding a protein simulate. But you have these things. So I guess the analog would be kind of something that tests for biases in these chats. So like I got one from my brother yesterday. He put in like, what is the Great Reset? And write 3 paragraphs about the Great Reset and why Carl Schwab is trying to have a social credit system implemented. Just for fun. He sent me the output of it. It's like that's a myth, and a GPT comes back with like that's a right wing talking point that has a. So it's obviously like looking at Wikipedia. So if I ever do a video about COVID, which I have one coming out with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah, yeah, he's the
He's a
San Diego. Oh, he's the Stanford professor who was just made news because he was in the Twitter files.
He is in the Twitter files, but the reason he was in the Twitter files is because he's established what was called the Great Barrington Declaration, which was a common sense protocol that we should work to not do social lockdowns and complete society shutdown, which we did do, because that would have ultimately negative downstream consequences on mental health and physical health and economic health. And he's an epidemiologist and a medical doctor at the Stanford Medical School. And he was later targeted specifically by Fauci and Francis Collins, the director of the NIH. And they called for a takedown of him and one of his colleagues, Michael Levitt, who's a Nobel Prize winner at Stanford, for being fringe, quote, this is what Collins is. Imagine basically any boss, the ultimate boss of the world, of this world of academia. He's a director of the NIH, which supplies $50 billion a year in medical research. And he called him a fringe epidemiologist, and that he called for a takedown of them, public takedown, basically calling for a public shaming. And Fauci said, I largely agree. And this is just despicable. So I have a podcast coming out with him. But when I do the podcast, YouTube will insert, and YouTube, and this is why I don't like YouTube very much, even though I'm it's trying to grow my channel's audience. But they'll put a warning and a link to Wikipedia. It's just like if you put COVID anywhere in there, here's the thing on COVID. Or if you put in the Great Reset. I did an interview with Neil Ferguson, the historian, also at Stanford, and it was about the Great Reset. And the Great Reset is a myth, and it just refers to Wikipedia, which is like wildly as left wing as Twitter ever was. And it'll refer you to there. And so it's GPT chat is just searching Wikipedia. So it's like these biases are just getting like mega amplified.
No,
And so
I
we
agree
need
with you.
some kind of tool to like an AI tool that's basically going to be the anti-Turing test. So it's a tool that's going to prove that you're a computer. And I don't know how to implement it. I mean, you know much more about computer science than I do, but like we're going to need some way, just like detecting, this guy Tom Cruise, or Michael Saylor, is telling you to buy this crap coin. Let me say that, this is a deep fake. But we need the same thing. We need like deepfake detectors. We need chatbot detectors and all sorts of things. I think it's going to become very, 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 very serious pretty soon.
I think you could be right, and I think my solution is to withdraw more and more from social media. And this relates to our beginning conversation, which is, every day I used to be on social media to try to get more followers and engage with my, with people and as many people as possible. And now I just realize, not only the uselessness of it, but it just gets me in more and more trouble. And but your point about AI, I just want to tell you on Notepad we have an AI, we have GPT-3 hooked up, and if you need AI-based ideas to add to your own list, we coded it up so that you can do that. And so I had a bad business idea. I called it bad idea the other day, and it was called the podcast family tree. So
Okay.
like you've been on my podcast, so you're like a quote unquote son of mine on my podcast.
Yep.
And Ryan Howell
And Jordan Harbinger, just to interrupt, was the reason that I was able to come on your podcast.
Right. And so I've been on
and get you on my
been
podcast.
on mine, or let's say Andrew Huberman's been mine, and Lex Friedman also had Andrew Huberman. So Lex Friedman and I would be sort of like in-laws together of Andrew Huberman. And the idea of the podcast family tree, the business point is that you could see which podcasts are similar to yours, the ones you have the most kind of genetic, quote unquote, genetic material together on this family tree. And also it could help you find guests. You could see which podcasts have had guests, which podcasts similar to yours on the family tree have had guests that you haven't had, and so on. So anyway,
correct. Yes.
the
Networking. The network of networks. Yeah, it's like Facebook. Yeah.
But I had the AI generate an additional idea for this list. The list was describing the idea, and then I fed in just the phrase podcast family tree to the AI and to have it come up with an idea. So it didn't really understand what I was asking. So here is the idea it came up with. The title of the idea is The Family Tree of Bad Ideas. And then it says, the description of the family tree of bad ideas is how capitalism is ruining our planet. In this podcast, we explore how capitalism is ruining our planet. We trace its origins back to its creator and see how it has spawned a new generation of terrible ideas. That was the AI generated idea. It had nothing to do with capitalism when I was asking it, but that was like its impulse. So you're right.
Wow.
There's this like weird bias that we have to be careful.
Yeah, it's funny.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yep.
So look, Brian, you got to come on the podcast more often. We can't have it be like,
I know.
year. And we should also
I definitely
figure out another thing to work on. We always were thinking out things to work on.
Well, we had a pod pub, which we should get back to, distilling books. Are you still bullish, on podcasting as a big thing, or you think we're reaching peak podcast?
No, I'm
we're up to 4 million.
I don't see the podcast world growing, but it's not shrinking either. And I think there is always a voice for people want to listen to things when they're driving to work or they're at their gym. They can't watch things; they listen to things then. And they want to hear good ideas and interesting ideas and insightful ideas and or good stories. True crime is the biggest podcast category actually. So I think people always say books are dead, and now they're saying podcasts are dead. None of these things are true. It's just that TikTok is amazing. So
exactly. I started to do the short video. I can't get into TikTok. I just oh my God. I think it's going to get shut down.
The most talented humans on the planet. Okay, whether it's TikTok or Instagram Reels, whatever. The most talented humans on you see these like kids jumping from building to building and then doing flips and then other kids doing magic that's unbelievable, and it's amazing the talent that finds itself on TikTok.
What is going to be the TikTok? I asked a question on Twitter. I was like, what is now there's post news and then it was Mastodon. I was like, what is post news going to be the Mastodon of, because Twitter's just going to stay, right? I mean, you're still pretty optimistic about Twitter, even with Elon.
No, I think Elon Musk is going to do a great job, and he's already doing a great job. But Notepad, NOTEPD.com. The social network of ideas. This is the most actual insightful social network out there with a great community. I'm self-promoting because it's my site.
No, I love it.
I love this site.
I got the Brian. I got the @Brian at Notepad. I got the premium handle, the 5-character handle. Thanks to Jay setting it up.
You're gonna get offers for millions for that.
Oh, I know. I'm gonna sell that squatter domain and squat on that. So last question for you maybe is it revolves around. So one of the things that's been hard for me is I don't, I get paid. I'm a public, university professor. I get paid fine. But, obviously I get sponsor opportunities for the podcast. And you always said, when I was first asking you, should I accept this, click, CPM, whatever that stands for, cost per mil. And I said, should I accept, $1 per whatever, $15, $20. And you were like, well, there's the actual money aspect of it, which is important. But then there's the there's kind of the prestige that you are in a category of people that can advertise and monetize your podcast.
Right. I think
So
that is valuable.
but now like it is also an overhead. There's a burden. There's managing expectations, and there's like looking for advertisers. Then there's vetting their things. Like, do I really want to do like manscaping again? Like how much is there left to mow on my lawn? Whatever. Like, and just for the brand, and like I'm supposed to be a serious professional. And then sometimes it'll be some program, like they'll put in like eBay, and it'll be like 500 decibel loud, like get your Christmas card and whatever. I'm like, well, I'm assigned, like I've got a Nobel Prize winner on right now. I guess I'm asking you, I don't need the money, necessarily. It's not that much. It is a workload. It is a kind of managerial overhead, a burden, bandwidth detractor.
Okay. So your pain point. So let's just look at the pain points first. One is there's a reputation thing. You say you're a serious professor. It looks weird when you're talking about manscaping and whatever. Second is the managerial overhead. Third is what?
The third is like giving something away for free. On one hand, it could increase your audience, right? Because people I just skip over. Even your ads, like half the time I'll just fast forward, 45-second skip.
Yeah.
I have this thing when I'm listening to Ben Shapiro, I know what he's going to say, like, but now. And as soon as he says, like, but now, like, it's 45, and then, like, he's back. And I don't listen to him. But I'd like to not have to do that, and it would make me more endeared to a podcaster because he's not selling me stuff. He's not the type of person that I have to worry he's going to sell me athletic greens or whatever.
Right. So I would say for you probably don't need to do ads to you have a lot of things like you look, me too. I probably don't need to have ads, but here's the thing. First off, I still stand by it shows that you're the type of podcast who's big enough that people want to advertise on you, and then your content is such that people want to advertise. So that's a kind of authority legitimacy. But
yeah,
a lot of your pain points have nothing to do with ads, but like managerial overhead, you can use a third-party ad placement agency like Midroll to do all your ad placements, and you could say, I don't want to do any host read ads. I just want to do ones that are read by someone else and placed into the podcast. I want to have nothing to do with them. So then you have zero managerial overhead and zero personal stake in what you're advertising.
You still have this thing that you are in a category of someone who's pitching you, to my audience. Now I'm like a salesman.
But it's not you personally, like
I'm a vector to sell them. Yeah, sure, I agree. It's one step removed, but like if let's say I just like this all in podcast, I think one of the reasons I like listening to them is if I'm going to sleep, I'm not going to get interrupted with some ad for eBay in the middle or some ad for
I don't think you need
athletic
to do,
greens. I guess
I don't think you need to do ads. One reason I like to do ads is that I also feel everything I do should have at some point should be profitable, because that's another way of measuring that I'm doing something that is, I don't want to say worthwhile, but it is doing something that is
I know
hit some bar that people have said, okay, this is worth it. And
the problem with that is that, yes, right. So as long as you're not like, I have to break even or I have to, make money, I think that's when it becomes like, I got into this for fun.
Unless you're like Joe Rogan or Ben Shapiro. But
or Tim Ferriss or exactly. Or Andrew Huberman, who won't come on my show.
Like I like to know that everything I do pays for itself. So I wasn't
always
like
that.
This gives me a good discipline about the quality of what I'm doing, so I don't take it for granted. It gives me a good discipline about understanding what to pay people and what different costs are worth it. So this is only a new philosophy for me, and I think. But it was told to me by Naveen Jain, who's a billionaire who started InfoSpace in the '90s, and now he has various entrepreneurship activities. Because I asked him, why'd you raise $20 million for your latest business when you're a billionaire? Why didn't you just fund it yourself?
Right.
And he said that if he paid for himself, he would never know if it really had value. Like, when it has value and other people value it. So
that's true. But I mean, at a certain point, but you only want to know it has value because you want it to be not sunk cost, and kind of leaving money on the table or whatever. Like, in other words, you could just start a charity, or whatever.
I don't want to do that. I want to do a podcast. Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com.
This is such a valuable service for all business owners, big businesses, small businesses, doesn't matter. I wish I had this in the many different businesses that I've started. Sometimes it seems like your business is humming, but then suddenly you don't understand it. You're starting to fall behind. You're not understanding where your costs are, where your revenues are, where your payments are. Teams are buried in all sorts of like BS work, and you can't seem to close the books. So you need like one dashboard, one source of truth. I'm jealous of this business, NetSuite from Oracle, of course, NetSuite by Oracle. I wish I'd come up with this idea. It's a brilliant concept to have all your business intelligence on one dashboard. This is why you need to know these three numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. So 37,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the number one cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. One, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, your KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/James. That's netsuite.com/James to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/James.
What do you want to do let me ask you a question. Next year, what's like your calendar look like? Your, kind of in all different dimensions, a week scale for the whole year. Like if I had asked myself last year why I want that, I couldn't have imagined how great this year would be with the one major tragedy of losing a very close friend at a very young age with young children. That's equal to all the good stuff that happened and more. But I couldn't have fathomed what would happen this year, and it's great, and I feel blessed.
Yeah,
What
no,
are you
I
looking
think
forward to next year? That's reasonable. That's possible to occur.
first off, I always make predictions for myself at the beginning of the year, and they always change. Like I remember
Yeah.
with 2014 or 2015, I wanted to write a novel, and I ended up getting obsessed with stand-up comedy, and that's all I
Yes.
did.
I remember.
And but I'm really excited about. I want to really. I help so many people with their writing, and I really love it and enjoy it. Like I enjoy coaching writing now more than I even enjoy writing, and I'm really excited about making a writing course on whether I put it on Udemy or wherever else, I don't know. But Jay and I are videotaping that this coming weekend. The other
All
thing
right.
is,
Yeah, that's good.
I've been working, when I was a lad in the 90s, achieved a high chess ranking, and my goal is to achieve an even higher one this coming year and then write a book about it, because the book has been so fascinating. It's not about chess. Like, there's so many things I've experienced on this journey of trying to achieve something I achieved as a 27-year-old that it's blown my mind. I learned things I did not realize I'd be learning about myself, about the brain, about health, about ambition. All of these things that we've talked about has come from just simply trying to achieve the chess rating I had in the 90s.
So that's kind of like your metric, summarizing your metric for next year. Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
Because
for me,
if I do that, it means I will have put myself through a study program and discipline
yes,
to a level that I've never done before. Like, it's much harder for somebody
exactly. No, I get it, and it's kind of like an encrypted, very dense encryption that summarizes a lot of things, and what reminds me of a very famous Russian physicist who was the intellectual son of another great Russian physicist, Yakov Zeldovich. He said that this guy Zeldovich would always tell him, he would say, like when he was a young man, he said, "You must take your son or daughter skiing. Like that's your goal in life." And he never knew what the hell he meant. Like, first of all, he was single. Second, he didn't have any kids that he knew about, but he was like, what the hell is he talking about? Like, imagine what it means to take your kids skiing. You have to have physical health. You have to have a kid. You have to have, maybe have been married
Oh,
even.
that's so interesting. Yeah.
And then you have to have the wherewithal to
Oh my
like
God.
go there. And
That is the perfect
isn't that interesting?
analogy. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's right. Because like, I realize now I need to think, and this I realized a while ago, but I've been needing to think about my nutrition. I've been needing to think about my sleep schedule, my stamina, my energy. So I have to exercise to get
Studying.
energy.
Yeah.
And just neuroscience. I've had to learn like what things just at the age of 50 are different than at the age of 27. And I always thought I was very good at learning how to learn, but there's a different level now achieving something at this age that is, the industry itself has changed, the chess world has changed, but I've changed. So the discipline is like enormous. It's much more than what I
Right.
thought I needed.
It's like, imagine I tell you, James, you're going to come in last in your final race. You're like, what the hell? I don't want to come in last. But if I say, oh, you set the world record for over 100-year-old speed walkers, you'd be like, hell yeah. Like, that'll be awesome. Like, just to know that. So anyway, I wish that you will have at least the fourth power of my chess rating coming this year. And that, you won't have to cheat to get there, with putting something, in some orifice of your body as alleged by somebody about somebody else. But I do wish you all the best, and yes, I hope that we can talk a little bit more frequently and maybe get together. I'm not gonna. I'll tell you, I have a really cool kind of adventure that's coming up in January, February that involves
where are you going?
someone we've talked about. Well, I'll talk about it later. It's related to Sam Bankman-Fried though, so I'm gonna need your advice. I'm gonna go visit him.
All right, let's.
I want to get him on the podcast, but I need some help in vetting it. He doesn't know about this at all, by the way. But I'm going to be in his neighborhood, so I figured I'd give it a try.
The Bahamas?
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, Brian, once again, such a great time having you on the podcast. And I actually had a bunch of science questions for you, but we should do another one in a month where because I always get these articles like, turns out time in the universe never really I get these weird physics.
Wormhole was created in the lab in a quantum computer. You're like,
yeah,
and putting all these word salads together.
I have all these I want to things that I really want to learn what they mean, because
I want to be your house, your science. I want you to treat me like I treat my grad students.
I believe
totally
me.
exploitative.
Going on strike, I will do that. All right.
Okay, Ryan. Well, happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas, everybody out there. And can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Entresto, sacubitril valsartan tablets, is the #1 heart failure brand prescribed by cardiologists and has helped over 1 million people with heart failure. It's a prescription medicine that treats adults with long-lasting chronic heart failure and works better when the heart cannot pump a normal amount of blood to the body.
Don't take Entresto if pregnant. It can cause harm or death to an unborn baby. Don't take Entresto with an ACE inhibitor or aliskiren, or if you've had angioedema with an ACE or ARB. Don't take with aliskiren or within 36 hours of taking an ACE inhibitor. The most serious side effects are angioedema, low blood pressure, kidney problems, or high blood potassium. Angioedema is swelling of your face, lips, tongue, and throat that may cause death. If it causes difficulty breathing, get emergency help.
Ask your doctor about Entresto. To learn more, visit support.entresto.com or call 833-446-6699. For pricing, visit Entresto.com/cost. If you can't afford your medication, Novartis may be able to help.
The McNugget Buddies are back. But this time, they got a fresh look as part of the new Kerwin Frost box at McDonald's. We're talking all new buddies, dressed head to toe in the freshest fits, all designed by the artist Kerwin Frost. So when you order the Kerwin Frost box with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac, you'll get one of the flyest McNugget buddies to go with it. Think you can collect them all? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.